Hi everyone, welcome. It was 13 days ago when we last checked in on these African nightcrawlers. This system's 144 days old. 13 days ago during the last check-in it got its 10th feeding, and associated to this 144-day-old worm bin is its cocoon nursery. And we've already gone through the whole thing of giving the cocoons time to hatch, we've gone through the haul out, and we've even hinted at me just doing some off-camera work, emptying the container into my storage. The last video even featured me showing some of my storage containers where my castings are stored. I'm still not at that point yet. One thing we did do last time though was we tried to reduce the material down to a somewhat more fine consistency. So I ran the material through this really fine mesh. It's like a bag that you get onions or garlic in or whatever, some sort of produce. See, plastic was used to cover things up here, keep the moisture in. And I even used this little bag here to hold it all down. So over the past 13 days, rather than me just proceeding to the emptying of this container, I proceeded to put a chunk of watermelon and a piece of cantaloupe melon, as well as a little bit of grit out there for them, in the hopes that maybe I could round up some babies before we actually commit to, putting this material into storage. So I think this will be our last check-in on this batch of castings. We're going to see what the melon did as far as rounding up babies. We're going to reunite them with the rest of the family, and then this is going to go into storage. It's about time. And I got food for these guys too. So let me put on a glove and we'll get to work. The main thing that prevented me from wanting to put these castings directly into storage was the presence of a lot of little pieces of shredded material that seemed to not be broken down yet. So it had all this confetti in it. And it was enough to fill up this filter bag that I used as my screen. And you could see a lot of it right in here, alongside a whole bunch of actual castings. It did actually seem to me like, given a little bit more time for a lot of these little casting boulders to dry, that just a little bit of agitation, a little bit of squeezing might result in a whole bunch more casting material that could simply just drop through this bag and be part of the castings harvest. But you know what? I actually thought to myself, why don't I just relocate this whole interesting contraption as it is, and we'll put it right into the active worm bin, and then it could continue its breakdown over there. I was told later by one of the viewers, I think it was Plant Obsessed, said that even though I was observing some weird stretchy material, I'm not sure if it gets caught on the camera, but I'm attempting to tug at this material to give it a little bit of a stretch, and you can see it springs back. It made me wonder if it was a material that would break down, and I was told that it's probably the tape from the Amazon boxes, and I think we've already seen that Amazon boxes do break down. Now, you know, the melon has been nibbled down, so there's really no signs of any of the soft stuff, just the tougher outer skin. So that would make you think that there's worms in here doing this, right? But I don't even see one. And I got to admit, the material is super dry. But I mean, 13 days, you see the results, and then you don't find the culprits. And you know, maybe if I put my little thinking cap on, if I think in terms of what's in here, this is all the large chunk materials that wouldn't pass through the screen, stuff that I treated as sort of debris, but maybe the worms are actually treating it as bedding / food. So maybe this is where all the worms went to. Seems like a good theory, right? After eating the melon and realizing that the rest of this stuff is completely depleted, they can move into all the stuff that I filtered out of it, because it's all chock full of all those things that the worms need. Which would make you think that there's worms in here, but I'm not seeing any evidence of that either. What on earth is going on here? Where did my worms go? I mean, I did set this whole thing on just the assumption that we still had some baby worms to collect. because it seemed like we did do a pretty nice thorough job doing the haul out. However, I'm definitely not seeing any signs of what I thought I'd be hauling out of here. Well, you know, either way, this stuff can't go into casting storage. And these leftover bits of melon, whoever ate the stuff, who knows who it is. I think we're just going to go ahead and put all this stuff right into the active worm bin so that this stuff can finally be put into storage, bring closure to this batch of nice castings, and the mystery will just continue. Maybe I did let this stuff get too dry, maybe the babies couldn't survive. It's unfortunate, but I guess the bright side is that we did manage to get the majority of them out, I believe. So we're going to go get the adult bin out here, and we're going to get them fed. Okay, here's proof this time. I emptied the container out. We're taking the label off. It's official. But you know what? You want to hear another theory of where the baby worms went? This bin was resting right on top of where the adults all are. They ate the melon. They crawled down through the holes, and they went down to join the rest of the party. That's where they all are. But we don't know how many. But that's my theory. What do you think? All right, I'm going to go get the adults. Okay, here we go. And in here, I did the math during the last video, right there on the screen. We're somewhere above 2,200 worms in this system. According to our best estimates, there was the initial launch of the bin, and then later on, as we mentioned earlier, there was a haul out of babies from the nursery that added another few hundred worms, a couple hundred at least, I think. And you saw that that piece of paper bag was the only thing covering things up here. I guess it was kind of a double layer right here, right beneath the feeding zone indicator. I gotta say, things are pretty dry. I'm not going to get alarmed because I do know that you don't have to go too deep in most cases to get to some nice material where there's moisture and there's worms hanging out, so there's really nothing to be concerned about. But there is a good bit of dry stuff sitting right out here on the surface. Sometimes it is nice to push it aside because it's not really representative of what's going on in the bin in general, if you ask me. It's just sort of a no man's land in a way, where all the activity is just happening right beneath it. And this stuff, I believe, is also most in need of getting some attention from the wormies. I'm starting to wonder what our feeding zone is going to look like, because I could see us putting all that down into the feeding zone and almost like an equal amount of this stuff, which I think will just go right into the feeding zone too at this point. But I'm thinking I'm going to keep it in that mesh just to play it safe. It will be nice to just eventually see that all those strips of shredded whatever vanish over time, and then we'll know for sure. But this way I've still got something enveloping them that I can pull them all out with easily if I have to, or if I want to. But that means we've got to make a lot of space in here, right? And I got no problem with that. I've been doing that in a lot of my bins lately. I've been just, moving the whole contents to one side, building a fresh feeding area almost as big as the existing space itself in total. But before we continue here, you saw that feeding zone indicator, that piece of coffee filter resting out over the middle, was indicating that we had fed in the middle last time. I did watch the video. There was a couple whole carrots placed in here. I got a feeling the thing was a lot bigger. It's just amazing how it's sort of intact still. If it was like just peels of the carrot, it would be history by now for sure, almost 2 weeks later. There's a lot of bedding in here too, it's surprising. Alright, starting to see some worms. They're down low. I'm wondering if they're sensing the dryness encroaching on their space coming from above, making them feel like they can't really play around in this nice bedding here. They've got to go down low to be in a safe space from the dryness. It does almost seem that way, doesn't it? And, I'm fairly certain of what lives in this bin. I'm pretty sure that they are African nightcrawlers. My other batch of African nightcrawlers that I've had around for a while that I didn't really take good care of making sure that they didn't intermingle with other stuff. I don't know for sure if those are really African nightcrawlers, but I'm fairly certain about the worms that live in here. And they don't look anything like the ones that you normally see on other channels where they're big and huge. These things are puny. And I wonder if it's because of the confined space, the small space that they're living in, combined with maybe a lack of moisture. It does almost seem to me like going super generous on moisture today would be a really good idea. And going super generous on bedding too. Even though what we're collecting here is all nice bedding, I don't even know if we need to supplement any. I just like the idea of putting it all in one spot so we can load it up with tempting food items to get the activity in it cooking. So I don't think it's necessary to collect up as much as I have already. It's fine if that stuff just sort of blends in, but if there was big massive hunks of it like this here, that stuff deserves to be kind of dislodged from itself and broken up a little bit better, so that it doesn't just remain a clump of stuff that goes nowhere. Yeah, you know. And here too, I'm just finding some old leftover chunks of mango seeds that the worms are still working on. Yeah, the stuff flows nicely and I like that, but it's also an indicator of possibly a little bit insufficient moisture in here. So I gave these little wormies a chance to dive down for a minute or two while I prepped my squirt bottle. And I also fished out a few pieces of newspaper here that we're going to start with, lowering them all the way to the bottom as the foundation for the feeding. And then this should be interesting. I think we'll just, what do we do? Put them side by side in a way, give them both a fair chance, where this whole big mound of bedding that we collected off the top surface can sort of sit here alongside the, as well as the leftover foods. What else was over here? I thought there was other large chunks of bedding, stuff that we thought we could throw down and give it the attention that it needs, rather than being dry. I guess the rest of it can all just sort of get blended in. I'll put some of the dry leftover we're not putting down low over on this side so it gets blended in. We'll examine the outer edges of the system a little bit at the end and try to cover up. And it's going to be a tricky cover up because look at all this food I want to add in here too. Oh, you know what? I've also got my prepared shredded paper bedding mix. And I think we'll just use that as sort of the top covering for this, and then on top of that will come the existing materials from the surrounding bedding in the bin to cover up with. So you'll see I've taken some corn cob bits and cut the cob into little discs. It just seems to permit the stuff to break down a lot more quickly. And this piece of apple, I guess we'll put it right in the middle so some of the material on this side gets it and some of the material on that side gets it. Weird. Alright, and you know what? Before we put in all this nice juicy cucumber peel, which alone will also add a good bit of moisture, I'd like to also come in with my spray wand to rinse off my glove because I don't like being sloppy, and then we can get back to work. No, obviously I'm in here to really try to boost up the moisture level down here in the middle. I'm pretty confident that once we, start combining what's on these outer edges, that's going to be just fine. It's just all this dry stuff that was, out of the Cocoon nursery, this collection of not yet completely broken down bedding-like type stuff, which hopefully has a bunch of little tiny itsy bitsy baby worms in it, as well as a lot of this dry stuff we collected off the top surface. I've added, I don't know how much at this point. You can see how it collects. This thing sprays a good bit pretty quickly, so I don't want to go overboard. It does seem like I've added a good bit though. And now we can, before we put the food in, why don't we give it a little sprinkling of bedding so that the food has a little something for its juices to soak into right below it. Alright, very nice. Quite a good boost. You know what? I think they're going to really like it. What do you think? Look at all this. This is a lot. So some of them even have a good bit of the juicy, yummy cucumber in it. Here's some more of the ends. But most of it is just peel. You can probably imagine that a good bit of moisture is going to come out of this stuff. And this is going to be a good spot to check in on next time. The worms are going to be going crazy after this stuff. And it just feels like more paper shreds would be another good thing to add. And I hope I'm not leaving any crumply stuff. It was probably my own fault for just grabbing a whole bunch of stuff and not taking the time to make sure it's not already bound up into a large clump when I put it into the bin. It's the reason I include those little tiny shreds of leaf throughout the shredded paper and cardboard. The whole idea is that that stuff is meant to prevent any 2 or 3 pieces of shredded paper from attaching themselves to each other and sticking. But it's, you know, not a perfect solution. It's, oh, got leftovers here. Almost forgot about that leftover carrot. I don't know, did we excavate much else as far as leftovers? Mango seeds, I think we put all that stuff back in. Yeah, there was this here too. There was little cherry tomatoes. Come to think of it, other than that carrot, I don't know if I got distracted, but it just seemed like maybe we didn't see a whole lot of leftovers other than that big carrot, which was put in their hole, and I guess it would take time for them to make their way through that and start eating it. And out here we've got some really beautiful castings and a lot of wormies hanging out in it. That looks pretty cool. A little bit of bedding material scattered throughout it, but not too much. It's pretty much mostly castings out there. But we don't need all this to cover up with. We're going to get some from the other side too. What is this? This, I believe, is one of those tea bags that I've been pulling out every time I bump into one. And it does seem like every check-in results in us finding at least one. So that was almost to be expected. Such a nice earthy smell coming out of this bin. You would never think, you know, you would think there'd be all kinds of lingering odors of the foods that the worms have been fed over time, but it just has this interesting earthy scent to it. Here's more leftovers, little cherry tomatoes, I believe they were. There might have been grapes too. I didn't look that closely. It was just an assortment of little things. But it does seem like, for the most part, the worms took care of it and gobbled it all up. Same thing here. Lots of castings, only little bits of shredded paper here and there mixed in. But it does seem like they've done a terrific job working down the majority of this stuff. I don't know. It does seem like these little wormies have a lot of potential for growth if they were fed differently, if they were living in a larger space, maybe. I don't know. I'm sure there's things that I could be doing to promote the growth of large African night crawlers, but if they stay small, that's fine. Well, most people I see that have them seem to somehow manage a good size. Maybe they're keeping them in a large mammoth bag. Maybe they're keeping them in a huge 55-gallon drum. I don't know what the reason is. Maybe it's just the confined space of my bins that causes my African night crawlers to tend to stay a little bit small. Someday I'll probably do an experiment to see if I can tinker with that a little bit. So, I don't know. Do you think I added enough bedding? I was really hoping that I might be able to do more, but I feel like I was pretty generous today. And I'm so glad that we got rid of the cocoon nursery now. It's high time. So that's it for our little check-in here on this 144-day-old worm bin. It's gotten its 11th feeding today. And we actually managed to, I don't know, maybe bring over a few worms, but I have no way to know for sure. I didn't see any. I mean, do you think I did? I'd love to hear people's thoughts on that, but I'm not altering the worm count in here. Right now we've got a count that's just a little bit over 2,200, and that's fine by me. All right, everyone, that's it for the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.